This is Twit.
Bandwidth for Know-How is brought to you by CacheFly.
This episode of Know-How is brought to you by Corning. Corning's incredibly durable Thunderbolt and USB 3.0 optical cables are longer, thinner, lighter, and stronger. Go to Corning.com/twit to save up to $130 on their superior Thunderbolt optical cables. Today on Know-How,
we're back from Blackhat.
welcome to Know-How. It's the Twitch show where we build, bend, break, and upgrade. I'm Father Robert Balliser.
I'm Bryan Burnett.
And for the next 30, 45 minutes, we're going to be showing you some of the things that we've been doing so that you can take them home and geek out on your own. Bryan, we're actually kind of rusty because we just got back from the desert.
Yes, it was our annual trip out to Blackhat and DEF CON. It was a lot of fun. A lot of work, but it was a lot of fun.
For people who don't know, Blackhat tends to be more it's the professional conference. I mean, not to say that there are not professionals at DEF CON, because there definitely are. DEF CON is larger, but Blackhat is more sort of like the networking place for the enterprise and the business and security researchers, whereas DEF CON I like to think of as it's summer camp. It's everybody. Everybody comes out there. It's not nearly as expensive as DEF CON, but those two conferences kind of meld together along with B-Sides in Las Vegas to create the perfect week of security research.
Yeah, what I found is a lot of people go to Blackhat and then they kind of let loose and go to DEF CON. Like it's the hobbyist kind of enthusiast hacking conference that I've had a lot of fun at.
Yeah. Now we're going to be giving you some of the coverage from Blackhat, which is going to be interesting because there were some very interesting exploits that were discussed. But before we do that, normally in this pod we would have Grow How. Well, we're not doing that this week because it is a special week. We're just getting back from the desert. But we did want to show you it's both a triumph and on our part failure. Remember how we said that the automated systems work so much better for growing?
Yes.
They do, and this is proof. I mean, this...
Even when you neglect them to the extreme.
We left this thing alone for 2 weeks, and it did phenomenally. I mean, look at this. Let me turn off the light so it's not so blown out. The thing, though, is plants... they do need a little bit of care once they start actually touching the light.
Yeah, you can tell that a few of the edges have gotten burnt on the lettuce, and we've ignored it to the point where it's used up its water supply
completely,
and it's wilted in certain areas and stuff. Because when you first start out, you fill it with water, and you had like a week or almost a week and a half, and nothing really happened.
And then it just exploded.
Then it hits a certain stage of growth, and you have to be filling it up like every other day.
But I gotta say, I mean, this should tell you if you wanted fresh greens, this is something that you could keep on your kitchen top, wherever it might be. Just have this growing, and as long as you cycle the pods, you could have super fresh greens like every 2 weeks.
Yeah, you were saying that, so we have basil over
this is
on
perfect,
the side here. You could cut that back and then just continually grow it right there.
I love that smell. Oh my gosh. I wouldn't even eat it. I would just like rub this on my pillow. I love that smell.
These are edible?
Oh man. Why are you gonna eat my plants? One thing I will say is this is something we should have thought of, much better pod management, because there's 6 pods here. This lettuce got so big that it was a race. So the one that got the biggest killed the other 2 because they could no longer get light.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to tell. But we had a plant over in the corner here that got shadowed.
You can pull it, pull the pod.
And this it's sad now.
Now remember, this was the one that it was way down.
Make it.
It was deep in the pod, so it did sprout, but by the time it sprouted, the other one was so big, it couldn't get to the light.
Yeah, it barely even has the roots coming out. But do you want to try lifting this out and showing?
Hold on, let me pull the power here. There we go, okay.
So you get that side. We're like hitting the top. We can't even like lift it out to show the root system.
Oh my God!
Look at that.
That is crazy.
There's some healthy roots.
But yeah, they're healthy. They're not slimy, which I thought they might be because we really neglected this thing. But this is a healthy root system. Now, I actually 3D printed a new pod system so that you can take the pods out of this and then put them into the grow room.
That's pretty cool.
So I mean, this again. not only does it look good, not only does it smell fantastic,
It does.
It works. I can't say it enough. This thing actually works.
I know, we might sound a little surprised because it's just how poorly we took care of it.
We deliberately neglected this thing. I mean, because my schedule is kind of weird, where basically I'm only in studio Thursdays and Fridays. So we would care for it maybe on Thursday.
Usually when we were on
about it,
we would just leave it on the set, and then we just wouldn't think about it until we came back to work. We're like, oh, right, I should put water
in that. In fact, I'm betting that if we actually had made sure to follow the once a week rule that we made for this, we probably could have harvested this about a week ago, maybe a week and a half ago.
I think so. We would have had like 8 salads by now.
Yeah. But folks, we're going to go ahead and show you the Elite, because we've got the Elite coming up. That thing is much bigger. It's a 9-pod system versus a 6-pod system. But I'd say, you know what? This is not bad. For about $60 for this low-end system, this did a phenomenal job. I will say, what you probably want to do is you want to get the pods. You can buy the pods without seeds, and then you can plant what you want.
Oh, that's really cool. I like that idea.
I'm going to try this with the lavender, which I have killed like 6 generations of lavender.
Is lavender really that difficult?
It's not that difficult, but it's one of these crops that it likes on a schedule. It likes to be on a schedule.
Okay.
Water at the same time every day. Fertilize it at the same time, you know, in the schedule. And I'm not good at that.
Well, you know, speaking of watering things on a schedule, my bonsai has recovered. I don't have it here with me, but that week that we were gone, like I had Tony taking care of it, watering it, and I left it in the proximity of this, so it was getting light from this too.
You cheated.
I did cheat. It didn't have spider mites though. It was just neglect, I think. And so it's come back. I've been pH balancing my water, and it really is pretty impressive how poorly you can actually take care of a plant and it will recover.
They will come back.
And
they will come back.
It will probably come back to murder you because, you know, you just made it suffer.
Why do you hate me, creator?
But, you know, I was really happy to see that my bonsai had started growing again.
Yeah. And I will say, if you are like us and you have a black thumb and you killed everything you've ever tried to grow, get a system like this. Because once you start to see how this works, this actually changed the way that I take care of the plants I have in the grow tent.
Can I eat one of the basil leaves?
Go for it.
All right. I mean, I just got dared by JJ in the chat room, so I can't not do a dare.
Yeah. Hey, wait. What?
Oh, it's flavorful.
Holy.
That's really good. You know what it makes me want though?
Pho.
Pho.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Vietnamese pho.
I wanted to just throw that on top of some pho.
You know what? The next time I go into my favorite pho place in San Francisco and they come
Bring your own basil?
No.
No, I got this.
I just pull this out of my bag, start picking off.
Now that I think about it though, we probably should have washed it off.
No, you know what? We didn't put any fertilizers in this. I mean, we didn't put any pesticides on this, and it was clean, mostly.
Yeah, like everyone in the studio has been touching it.
Oh, Burke was rubbing his face on the basil.
All right, moving on.
Yeah, let's get away from this, because yes, Grow How will be back, but first we need to talk a little bit about security. Now, Brian, this first one was one of the presentations that was happening inside the press room.
Yeah.
It kind of blew us away because, you know, we've always heard next-gen security for finances, next-gen security for ATMs, next-gen security for point-of-sale systems is going to fix what we have right now. Because right now, there's an epidemic of the skimmers, which are just magnetic card readers. You swipe someone's card, and then you have all the information that you need to make a fraudulent transaction.
Skimmers are so last year, though, Padre.
Yeah, we don't do skimmers anymore. We do shimmers.
Right.
Shimmers are something new that it's supposed to affect those next-gen chip and pin cards.
We're getting those now, though. The U.S., we're safe now. We're getting chip and pin. We've caught up to Europe. We're good.
We are a decade and a half behind the rest of the world. And now that we have mostly chip, although not chip and pin, most of our cards don't have pin, that's chip and sign, the machines that run those are supposed to be very secure, but Rapid7 showed us, no, not even close.
Which makes it one of the more fun demos to watch, because a lot of the Blackhat stuff, like, well, there was Jamie with the car hacking and stuff like that's very visual. But a lot of the Blackhat hacking, you know, is behind the scenes, like updating the firmware and gaining access to a network kind of stuff. This was a little bit more visual.
Yeah, whereas a lot of the other hackers, they showed us like videos of their demos. The Rapid7 folks actually brought a real next-gen ATM machine into the press room, and they demonstrated their hack in real time. So without further ado, if you're worried about the future of your financial security, maybe you should be. There are many reasons to push for enhanced security, but very few evoke emotion like this. I'm here with Weston Hecker from Rapid7, who just demonstrated a hack of a next-gen ATM machine. Weston, these next-gen machines are all over Europe, but very few have made it to the United States. Yeah. What have you found in terms of vulnerability?
Well, some of the active relaying of some of the messaging, there's vulnerabilities that come up from the limitations in the actual communication networks in the United States. And they have to be able to access on some of the smaller networks, like where they don't have the ability to get to some of the levels of security that the bigger networks have. So that's one of the things is some of the smaller ones are holding the big ones behind. So. Yeah.
In the demonstration, you showed the use of not a skimmer, which we are all accustomed to. We'll have several of them on demonstration at DEF CON, but this one is a shimmer, and it's designed to take the data from the new chip and PIN, or actually in the United States, the PIN cards. Yeah. How does that work?
Yeah, so basically that gets in between the actual contacts, and there's several point-of-sale attacks that have been done in the wild in the past. People have done demonstrations on this. There's lots of good research on it, but this one was I wondered why nobody went after ATM machines, and I actually went and looked at the attack surface of the actual ATMs and discovered some things that were specific to some of the ATM protocols. So yeah, that's kind of the direction that I went with it, and yeah. So.
And in layman's term, the demonstration essentially showed the use of a shimmer inside of a card machine. So someone would put their card in, do a regular transaction, say at Home Depot or Target, which have adopted the PIN, not the PIN, but the chips side of the card, and then you would replay that at an actual ATM machine. And you've created a device that can do the PIN entry if necessary, and then it just spat out money. Yeah. Tell me, how difficult would this be to correct? Because I know you're not releasing your source code. You're not really showing people your device because this is dangerous. But can it be fixed, or do we have to wait for the next-gen ATM?
Yeah. When I was actually going through some of the research, even being like a hobbyist in this kind of thing, it was something where I came up with like 3 pretty good ideas or solid directions that I would go with. And I think that, people that do this for a living, they're definitely going to come across that kind of stuff, especially when these things are brought up a couple of years before it's actually used out in the wild. So, some of the actual, like the shimmers that have been found in the wild, those ones have been used on improper EMV implementations. Like they'll actually make them into, a physical card. So, yeah, so some of those attacks that have been used in the wild are a little bit different. So it's as soon as that low-hanging fruit goes away, this is kind of where the bad guys are going to go. So.
And you even mentioned that you did find a few devices in the wild that had serial numbers. So obviously these are not one-off devices. These are being professionally produced.
Yeah, I forgot where the actual article was. I read it. It was they actually some of the shimmers that they'd come across. They looked like they were actually from the same lot numbers and same batches, which means that they're that's an indication of some kind of fabrication in a professional factory. So that's what the extent that the bad guys are going to. They have engineering backgrounds. They have the technical skills, as you saw with some of the malware stuff that's going on now. It's all professionally made now. So, yeah. Well,
we're just going to go ahead and throw them straight into the presentation that we recorded. But before that, if they wanted to find out more about Rapid7, more about the research that you've been doing, or more about the vulnerabilities that you found, where can they go?
Oh, yeah, just hit us up on rapid7.com. So, yeah, we got tons of information there. We got really good learning if you want to, just catch up on some of the, the latest computer skills. It's a really, really good site. And, a lot of our employees contribute a lot to it. So, yeah, it's not like anything that I've ever found on the internet as far as, the straightaway training. So it's very good stuff. So,
we've been speaking with Weston Hecker from Rapid7, who's here to make it rain.
EMV it stands for Euro, MasterCard, Visa, and I know what you're thinking. You're thinking this is going to be a long talk about EMV. It's not. So EMV is the chip card standard that's coming to the U.S. Hooray, U.S. We're finally catching up to the rest of the world. And the idea is that it phases out mag strips. And so mag stripe cards have been the standard in the U.S. for 1 million years, or 50. And the Carter gangs and the criminal activity around mag stripe cards is pretty well established. If I'm running a Carter organization, my goal is to steal mag stripe data, bundle that up, sell it on the dark web. and let somebody else deal with all the cash out, right? Well, with the move to EMV, this kind of bundling and selling much later doesn't really work anymore. EMV transactions are super time sensitive. So instead of stealing EMV data and trying to sell it at a later date, as a criminal attacker, I would need to be able to monetize this in much closer to real time. Now, EMV is definitely more secure than magstripe, but it is not a case where we're going to move to chip and pin and the criminals are going to throw up their hands and say like, oh, no, I'm done, I'm out, I can't do magstripe anymore. Absolutely not. What Weston has found through looking around at kind of like what the attack surface is looking like on EMV, as you've probably heard at every Black Hat over the last 5 years, the criminals are definitely moving there. And so we have now a scenario where a criminal organization can insert not a skimmer for magstripe, but a shimmer in a device much like this, a POS system that we're all familiar with. You just kind of drop it in there. Inside such a POS would be a shimmer that sits in between the card and the point-of-sale system. That shimmer is in fact itself a computer. It is connected to the internet. It modulates the electrical impulses from the EMV chip, shoots them over the internet to a device such as this one, and then those get replayed back out into a card that is capable of receiving this data and also is capable of like impersonating the EMV data. That the unsuspecting victim has now supplied in the chip and pin device. So, as you know, if you've tried to use chip and pin lately, sometimes it takes apparently forever, really more like 15, 20 seconds, and it's that kind of like time lag that the attack takes advantage of. This card is sitting there, apparently doing nothing, but in fact it's getting controlled by the ATM on the other side. So let's go over like each individual component that's behind here, because as you can see, it's got this attractive out of order sign. You can't actually see any of the electronics that have been laid in underneath. This is like kind of the point, right? Like this is one style of attack. Weston went through the handheld device where someone who's running the cash out would walk up to any ATM and do that. This is a more permanent solution. This would last, maybe overnight or a day or two before the owner notices that someone has put their ATM into an out of order state. So maybe let's go through so I have this blockchain of EMV transaction data that's very time sensitive. So what happens next? Like you have the Android phone. Let's start with Android and just kind of go through that.
Yeah. So basically, after they've
come on over
their information. Yeah. So after they've entered their information onto their webpage, it'll give a lot of information where you can watch the blockchain for those specific events that you actually. Oh, sorry. Yeah. So this thing will actually, the phone will actually look for its specific events and delimiting characters that it actually set when it purchased the transaction. So it's something it'll look for those specific figures and then know that that's it's time to start grabbing that transaction data, and it'll actually connect directly to the shim device. So it's a direct connection from the shim device to the actual point of sale or the ATM machine that is doing the cashing out, and it'll actually the initial communication between the EMV chip is actually not on the point of sale terminal. It'll actually be passed off to the ATM's information. So,
well, let's just kick it off.
Yeah, definitely.
So while Weston plugs in a thing, which is a technical term, imagine then, like I said, that there is this cloud of EMV data along with PIN information, which is all captured by the man-in-the-middle device. And so now the ATM or the Android phone that's sitting underneath here is catching that data. It's transmitting it to an EMV kind of replicator card, where that EMV device that's actually kind of parked in the slot is simulating the real EMV chip that's somewhere else on the point of sale system. And then there's also a couple of microcontrollers in there that's controlling some servos that are actually punching the buttons on the pin pad. And so it's picking up pin data. It's selecting how much cash to withdraw. This is all, by the way, mediated by the kind of fraud flags that are transmitted along with the EMV. and then it's just going to start spitting out cash as each transaction kind of gets flagged by the software running on the Android device, and then just kind of keeps going, apparently forever. In reality, if this were like a organized crime kind of situation, whoever's running the cash out, they would have like a block of time, say, or they're part of like the whole shimming operation. So I think with that, let's just get out of the way. And I think this will just keep going until either it runs out of cash or the fraud alert systems that are actually all still running, and it's very real, finally alerts that this ATM is behaving oddly.
Bryan, the scary thing about that exploit is they're not releasing any of their notes. So they showed the demo, and actually they let me take a peek at it. They trusted me enough, but they were saying, this is one of those rare exploits where releasing the data will not make it better because the machines are in play and they will not be fixed.
Ooh. And the scariest part too is that with the skimmers that have been around, a lot of people, if you pull on the machine or you try and physically move it around, like sometimes you can tell, like, oh, somebody put something over the top of this. These physically go into the slot and intercept all the information going through. It's physical man-in-the-middle attack.
This used to be one of my DEF CON Black Hat pastimes. I would go, I desperately wanted to find an ATM machine that had a skimming device on it because I wanted one. I just wanted to tear it apart. I never found one, but I mean, this is next level stuff.
Right, and you were saying that the hardware actually has like production numbers and things that they've found ones in the wild of.
That's the sad part. Those EMV machines, which we're just going to start getting. I mean, we're not actually ready to get there because most of us, even though we've got the chip, most of us don't have PIN. We're still chip and sign. Once we get chip and PIN, we'll start using those EMV, the Euro, MasterCard, Visa machines. And, well, they're already broken. When we get them, they're already broken. And the fact that those devices have serial numbers and have come off a production line means, look, this is actually an exploit that's running in the wild, and I don't know. I just don't know what to trust.
With the sophistication that is, engineers are pouring time into making these. These aren't just like, oh, some hobbyist thief wants to steal some money out of an ATM. This is like definitely organized.
Yeah, and the other part about this is, he was saying, well, if there was a way for you to notice that the transaction was actually being transmitted, then you might know that there's something wrong. But if you've used one of the credit cards with the chip, you know that once you put it in that slot, it could take 20, 30 seconds for it to actually go through. So if suddenly it takes 40 seconds, you're not going to notice.
No.
But what that meant was that transaction was transmitted in real time, and an ATM is currently spitting out money from your account, and then your transaction goes through.
Oof.
So you wouldn't know until you check your bank statement. Now, there's people in the chat room who are saying it's a one-time use, and absolutely, that's true. It's not like they can record the transaction and then play it back a week later.
Right.
But the idea is you get a lot of these shimmers into place at, say, a Target or a Home Depot, and then it's just a constant stream of these transactions going to your owned ATM machine.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's pretty nuts.
And when I actually saw how they built the device, it was actually kind of funny because what they did was they created the device, again, out of that Raspberry Pi and the two Arduinos, and then they just put a cardboard sign over the ATM that looked kind of professional. It said out of order.
Right.
But, the thing was spitting out money into the middle of the room.
Yeah, it's out of order in their favor. Yeah.
So, folks, maybe we should all just be hiding our cash under our beds. Don't do that.
We're back to that, yeah.
We're going to come right back to our Black Hat coverage. We've got a little something for people who may not trust their routers and Internet of Things devices, the ones they've got for maybe their home office or their small office. But before we do that, there's something else I want to talk about, Bryan.
Pokemon.
Not
No
Pokemon. No. I want to talk about how we connect our peripherals, our high-speed peripherals, so that we can get both the solid connection and the throughput that we demand, along with the flexibility of maybe being able to put my tower far away from my desktop, or noisy peripherals in a closet. It used to be really easy. You would just buy that really long, bulky serial or parallel extender.
Then hope that nobody ever runs over it with a chair or something like that.
Right.
Yeah.
Or it was so thick that you could actually trip over it. I mean, it was really.
I don't remember those days. That must have been a while ago.
Yeah, why do you do this? Why must you be the screen door on my submarine?
I'm sorry.
I'm trying to talk about serious technology here. And serious technology is all about fiber. We've got Corning showing us some of the new technology, the technology that you should be considering when you next deploy your high-speed peripherals. Now, what Bryan is holding right now, this is not a standard Thunderbolt cable.
Nope.
This is a Thunderbolt cable that uses fiber optics, specifically Corning fiber optics. Now, what that means is that you get a superior transmission rate, and it also means you get near bulletproof transmission. You can tie this in knots. You can step on it. You could do things to this fiber that would shatter a lesser product. But with Corning, you get nothing but pure Thunderbolt and USB 3 goodness. Whether you're into high-end video, photography, audio production, or computing, Corning's optical cables will allow you to build a convenient workspace through a superior long-distance connection. It works with USB 3.0 and Thunderbolt. They're incredibly strong and flexible, and they have cable runs of up to 60 meters, that's 200 feet for Thunderbolt, and 50 meters, that's 165 feet for USB 3. That makes it easy for you to move your noisy, space-consuming devices away from your workspace. These cables are also hot swappable, just like you would expect out of any standard USB 3 or Thunderbolt cable. You can daisy chain up to 6 Thunderbolt devices, you can bend or walk on them, and yes, they will work in every instance. I think the best testimony I can give you is the fact that Universal Audio, which is a professional audio service, relies on Corning's optical cables to achieve acoustic isolation in their studio. They need to move those noisy peripherals away. They can't have the optical drive spinning up next to the device that's supposed to be measuring how loud a particular device is. And they need Corning. They use Corning. They trust Corning. Shouldn't you too? Instead of investing on multiple extenders, adapters, and cables, turn to Corning to establish the connection that you need with one simple long-length cable. Corning's products are available at all major electronics and professional AV retailers, including Apple stores, Amazon, B&H, and more. If you are looking for high-speed connectivity, if you need a superior long-distance run, and if you want to do this all with a technology that is durable, then you owe it to yourself to check out Corning. Corning's cables are longer, thinner, lighter, and stronger. Go to Corning.com/twit to save up to $130 on Thunderbolt optical cables. This promotion is valid until August 31st or while supplies last, whichever occurs first. Just go to Corning.com/twit. That's Corning.com/twit to save on their unbeatable Thunderbolt cables. And we thank Corning for their support of know-how.
My favorite part and is
Shoving it back in the box?
Just, yeah. You know, don't have to worry about this Corning wire. It's just, all right, you're ready for the next time we have you on the show. Get in there.
You do realize the next time we do that ad, it's going to look like that. That's okay.
It still works.
Yeah, it's what we do. Okay, now Bryan, let's go from ATM machines, which that was an interesting exploit.
It was well, not fun. I think,
yeah.
okay, it was kind of fun because it was fun to watch. And even the money they had looked real. Like they had movie money and it had the little hologram strip and stuff in it. So that's a fun one to do.
It was. Now, one that I found less fun but very interesting was, well, Tripwire. Tripwire approached us before Blackhat. They said, look, we've got a researcher who has been looking at how easy it is to own those devices that might go into a home, a small office, a home office, whatever it might be. Specifically looking at those mass-produced devices that we generally think are going to be secure and yet are trivial to own. It's we've seen a little bit of this on know-how. We've seen some of this on TWI, definitely on security now. But unfortunately, it looks like a lot of people just don't realize how insecure their devices can be.
Right. A lot of people worry about their main machine going to a bad website or something like that. But I don't think a lot of people don't think about the edge, I think is what you call it. And that's like your router or anything that connects to your router. That's like the IoT kind of devices and stuff. And if one of those things gets compromised, that's everything, yeah.
Exactly. It's they don't own your workstation; they just own everything that's connected
on your network.
Near your workstation. Yay! How about that? Without further ado, let's take a trip back to Blackhat and find out what Tripwire has for your home office. One of the things that we heard at last year's Blackhat from the keynote speaker Dan Geer was that there's so much attention being paid to protecting the core that people often forget the edge. Well, if you own the edge, you don't need the core. To show you exactly how vulnerable the edge is, we brought in Craig Young from Tripwire to show you how quickly he can own those edge devices. Craig, thank you very much for speaking with us. Now, there is, I think, an awareness that a lot of the Soho and home devices that we buy are not as secure as they should be. But is there reason for people to be cautious about buying those devices?
Yeah, certainly, especially when you're looking at things like routers or home security products. These are going to be filtering sensitive data or giving control to important functionality in your house. So you really do want to be aware of the possibility of risks, vulnerabilities in these products, and be aware of what might happen if they get exploited.
At issue is the fact that a lot of people who might be buying these products are probably not IT people themselves. They see a product that will fulfill a need that they have. They need wireless, they need a router to split off their DSL modem. Maybe they need a slightly more advanced unit so that they can VPN back into the office. And so they're not as versed at the security features of any particular device. Has this been getting worse or better over, say, the last 5 years?
I would say over the last 5 years worse, that we're seeing more devices that are getting filled up with features that people don't necessarily need, and these features are coming in the form of like basement project quality open source software, where the author doesn't necessarily have a sense of security or didn't have time to do things the right way. And it's just kind of being assumed by the IoT vendors that this code they're taking in is safe, and so they ship it without really doing their own review, if they even have the capabilities of doing review.
We could talk about this issue until we're blue in the face, but I think it would be much better for our audience if you actually showed them what it would take to penetrate and exploit one of these devices. Could you show us some hands-on work?
Sure. So what I've got here, there is a common vulnerability within a number of different router brands, and this also affects other products that use similar types of firmware, where you have flaws that allow somebody to access files inappropriately on the device's web management system. The Ruckus wireless router system, for example, I was disclosing some vulnerabilities on this just today. But in this case, I'd like to show you how you can go from just having a firmware image of the product to having a functional exploit and being able to, for example, retrieve the admin password from a router without having any previous knowledge. All right, so what we've got here, this is an extraction of the firmware from a TrendNet router that I analyzed last year for the So Hopelessly Broken competition. What we've done is extracted the firmware and browsed into the root that serves the web files, and I'm going to actually use what files are there within the firmware to do an automated scanning process of the router and determine what files are exposed without authentication. So you can see we're looping across the files there and using curl to simply query them and check whether or not there's a 200 response from it. And if there is a 200 response, we just want to output the name of the file that was successfully requested. And you can see here index.html, obviously that's the base page that's going to come up, but we also see proc USB info.asp. So that immediately catches my interest. And so I'm going to query that page and see what the contents are from it. And we'll see that once we copy in this file name, we do get a response, and it's some system-level diagnostic information, something that probably wasn't meant to be exposed to the user. Now, if we go to a random other file within the administration folder of the router, we're going to see that we can't actually access this content directly. It's going to try and redirect us back to the login page. But if we go ahead and take the file that was allowed to us without authentication and append it into the query, we're all of a sudden able to get back response data from that syslog script. And if we take this one step further, we're able to find that there's a file on the router in the administration folder that actually contains the plain text password, the credentials for the administrator account. So we see that management page there, and if we use that same authentication bypass technique to try and request that page, we'll find that the password comes back to us. So we have appended our proc USB info, and now if we just look for that string within the output that contains our password, wrong clipboard there. We'll go ahead and see that the password was leet speak for the win.
Now, in this particular instance, I noticed that you're messing around with the firmware of Linksys WRT54G. What could I do? So you already talked about the privilege escalation of being able to request files that are not protected, and yet they contain sensitive information. What else would I, as an attacker, be able to do against this particular unit?
Sure, so this is actually a TrendNet router. That WRT54G that we all had, though, half of the models from that shipped with an in-toto web server that required absolutely no authentication. All the requests to it could be C-surfed. And in that case, or in this case, an attacker could make a malicious web page that's going to relay commands to your router, whether or not you're logged into it, and replace the firmware on the router, or change your DNS settings directly. Once they've done that, they can start using your router for DDoS attacks. They can start trying to do man-in-the-middle attacks against you. There's lots of possibilities. Since you've got very little visibility, there's no real tools out there for saying, does my router have the proper firmware on it anymore? There are some tools for checking your DNS settings, but nobody uses them.
Okay, so we know that routers can be vulnerable, but one of the bits of research that you've done is also showing how the Internet of Things security devices can be exploited. Can you tell me a little bit about the process of doing that?
Sure. It's very similar. Generally, I will like to start with using a firmware image and performing static analysis on the contents within it, going through and spidering over the web interfaces, especially looking for pages that are exposed without authentication. And, you know, a lot of these IoT devices, they just kind of assume if you're on the network with them, you're supposed to be using it and you're authenticated, and they're not going to prompt you for any passwords. What this completely neglects is the possibility of CSRF attacks. And, of course, that's where you're going to go to a malicious web page that's going to actually find on your network the product and send an exploit payload to it.
And it always seems as if the exploits are getting more and more creative. As we shut down some of the more obvious avenues, they'll do that in order to enumerate your device and figure out exactly how they attack you. Okay, now if you were to give our audience any practical advice for looking through their network inventory, be it a home office, a small office, wherever it might be, what are the bits of wisdom, the pearls that you can give to them to tell them to look for particular devices, particular firmwares that are better protected than others?
Well, for one thing, I would say that devices that offer a web interface that you don't have to log into, that should be a big warning sign of a risk right there. It's a little bit more difficult to check for someone outside of the tech industry, but looking at the requests coming out of it and seeing if it has a CSRF token in there, that's going to be very important. But in general, these IoT devices, whenever possible, you want to put them onto an isolated network. So you don't want to be able to directly reach them from the computer that you're browsing the web with.
And what about the advice that I've heard several times here at the show of avoiding a full stack solution for your network, where you have one vendor providing every single piece, or one super integrated appliance that now can open you up to many more vulnerabilities, because what formerly had affected only the router can now affect the router, storage, security, etc.
Yeah, this is certainly a risk of things being able to propagate across devices when they're sharing these kinds of proprietary protocols. Or, for example, if you look at some of the products that share a common platform, like, not to pick on them, but Belkin's Wemo, they all have a common firmware environment that they're using. And, for example, the command injection unauthenticated that I found on the Belkin Wemo outlet also affected the Belkin Wemo-based network cameras and probably every other Wemo-based product.
Convenient, unfortunately, also means pretty readily owned once you know how to handle one.
Yes, this is true. Convenience and security are opposing, certainly.
Now, if they wanted to find out more about your demonstrations, they wanted to find out more about Tripwire and more about your research on these Internet of Things devices, security devices, and home and Soho routers, where should they go?
Well, the Tripwire State of Security blog has some resources, but more immediately on Saturday at DEF CON, I'll be doing a workshop where I'm going to be teaching about brainwashing embedded systems. Later in the year at the Sector conference in Toronto, I'll be doing a full-day training with some of my colleagues there. I would definitely encourage looking out for these events if you can attend.
Well, actually, I'll be at DEF CON, and I'll bring some of my old trusty routers and see if we can bang up. Thank you very much for speaking with us. Thank you for sharing your time and for your wisdom. Now, once again, Tripwire, Craig Young, if you're looking for security, He's the man. You know, Brian, that's sort of the nightmare scenario that we've talked about on Know-How a lot. The idea that someone has access to your router. And if they have access to your router, that means they have access to everything inside the network,
Right.
which includes a lot of devices that were never designed to be on the internet.
No, exactly. And the more advanced, the first router I had was very basic.
Yeah.
It didn't have a lot of features or anything like that. And I have a new Synology router, which I love.
That thing's great.
The more I think about new routers, they're more and more sophisticated computers that could get owned.
And that was actually one of the points that we brought up during the interview, which is more and more of the devices that we have, they're full stack. I mean, it's not just a router. It used to be you had your router, maybe you had your access point, then you had your storage unit, maybe you had
a switch, maybe.
Exactly. Now it's all those things. It's a router, it's a switch, it's an access point, it's a storage server because most of them have like a USB that you can plug in. It's a print server because it also has that.
It's connected to your thermostat.
Precisely. And you know, I think it's time for us to start just assuming that devices inside the network are owned. Because
Right.
I could say, well, fine, you own my router, but all of my tunnels out of my network are still encrypted, so you're not going to be able to intercept my traffic. But they don't have to. Once they get in, they'll say, oh, look, he's got 20 Wemo devices from Belkin that are completely unprotected because, again, those were supposed to be inside the network. They were never supposed to be on the internet.
Right.
They don't have strong authentication, and so suddenly someone outside across the planet can start turning on my appliances on and off.
Right. Or, make them do things they weren't supposed or intended to do originally.
Not great. And then, of course, there's the ever popular, oh, I've got security cameras, and now someone can watch where all my security cameras are. They can see the feed.
I don't have to worry about those cameras on my network because those cameras don't face the internet. It's like, but they're on your network, and now somebody's on that.
Yeah, it's time that we start thinking everything faces the internet.
Yeah, and I think that's what I have learned the most from going to these events like Blackhat and DEF CON is assume the worst and don't just take things for granted, like, default passwords or stuff like that. Or even, not even default passwords, but just like be conscious of what you're plugging into your network.
By the way, speaking of plugging in, you may remember this. This is an IDIS Shield. This was their Raspberry product. IDIS sadly is gone. It was Daniel Ayub's company. I like the man. It just the fineness has never worked out. But we are repurposing this. I'm going to be doing a project on one of the build episodes of Know-How. I've turned this into a nice little tour device. So the idea is you get either wireless or Ethernet in. This connects to your laptop or your desktop. You don't have to do anything else. This automatically connects you to the Tor system.
Ah, that's cool. I like that.
It's sort of a derivative hack. There's been projects like this, but this has got a little bit of special sauce that I'm actually kind of proud of. We should see this in the next couple of months when we do another security episode build. But going to Blackhat, I wish I had brought this because there were times where I wanted to log in and I'm like, nope.
Not gonna do it. Not gonna do it.
Or like at DEF CON, using this limits my exposure. They could break the tunnel, but then it just restarts it. And yeah, you can hack this, but you're not going to get to the computer it's connected to.
No, that's cool. So you wouldn't end up on the wall of sheep, is what
I
you're
would
saying.
not end up on the wall of sheep, which it's kind of strange because it was up on the 26th floor this year, but going up there and you see that list scrolling, you're like, people are still logging in on an open Wi-Fi access point and still transmitting credentials in the clear. That's so 90s.
Yeah, that's right. And I feel bad for the people who are just showing up to Vegas and they don't necessarily know that there's like a convention going on. They're just like, why are all these people here?
That's actually the strange thing about having it at Paris Bally's, because when it was in the Rio and even the Alexis Park, we owned it. It was DEF CON. It was DEF CON.
And that's the only thing.
So everyone there understood. You're walking around Bally's and you see people on their phone and they're like, checking email, and you're like, oh, I'm so sorry, because they didn't know there was a hacker conference going on.
No.
You could tell because all the DEF CON people had their badges and everyone else had beautiful Louis Vuitton purses.
Right, and they're just looking around, scratching their heads while people are shaking their heads at them.
Just going, that's silly. All right, before we go, we did want to show this off. Now, you remember our little, our sugar snap pea project? Remember?
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah, folks, that's not an optical illusion. This was where it grew that first week. We thought this was going to die because we had no one to water it. So it has gone without water for 2 weeks while we were in DEF CON.
Yeah.
And it's gone to the top of the, we were wondering whether or not it would get to there.
It's almost gone beyond that.
Yeah, and not only did it get up there, but some of these, you can tell they have suffered greatly from not having water. They're crunchy, and yet they are still growing. So this is a fantastic plant to start with because it is incredibly hardy and it's hard to kill.
Yeah, you can neglect it like we have.
Now you understand why Jack and the Beanstalk was the story that people liked. Like, yeah, that's how beans grow.
Well, and all we've done is we just threw it in the basement, just put the light on it, and didn't water it. And
it just went.
Yeah. So when are the pods supposed to come out, though?
Let's see. It's been what? It's been 3 weeks. I think it's been 3 weeks since we planted these.
Yeah.
So I give it another 2 weeks, and we're actually you're gonna start seeing the pods come out, assuming
if we water.
that we keep watering. I feel so bad about that. That's really my fault.
I'm sure they'll be okay. They understand. They're suffering for knowledge.
Why do you hate us, Creator?
Does it please you to see us suffer?
Now we do have some future crops on know-how. Someone asked us to grow cabbage. We're going to grow cabbage.
That's such a boring vegetable.
Yeah, but you know what? The thing is, it's good to have crops that you can actually eat. So we're going to do cabbage. We're going to do squash. Okay. Someone wanted okra, which I remember as a child.
Like the little corn things?
They're slimy when you cook them.
Ew.
Some people like them. I'm not a big fan of them.
Okay.
Spinach. Spinach is actually always a good one.
Spinach would be good.
Well. And I think we got to do tomatoes. And
yeah, definitely tomatoes.
And although I have horrible memories of the Mark Watney experiment that I tried to do.
Potatoes? Did we talk about that?
I don't think we should.
Maybe we won't.
Put it this way, there's a reason why I invested heavily in carbon
in deodorizers.
Because I tried it the first week and my superior came down. He's like, "This is not going to work."
Not going to work.
It's like you're exhausting outside your window. My room's right above yours.
I didn't know that. That's awesome.
It's really bad.
Don't do things that you see in the movies.
Don't do it.
Yeah.
But potatoes would actually be fun to grow.
Potatoes would be fun to grow.
In regular fertilized soil.
Right.
Yeah.
What else would be good? Like, what do you mix? You could make it a salad. So we could do cherry tomatoes.
Beans.
We could do
So
salad.
you know what? Chili peppers. I've always wanted.
Chili peppers would be good. Yeah.
Let's do some chili peppers.
Okay.
You know what we should do? We should probably open it up. We're gonna start a little poll in the know-how group.
Yeah.
On Google Plus. So
do a vote.
Do a vote. If you want crops, that's where you should tell us, and that's what we're going to plant next. Folks, we are also going to be cycling through Grow How. We like to do this. It's just like when we were doing our quadcopter projects, where we don't want to do 5 straight months of Grow How. So we'll be cycling through the different crops. We've now given you all the basic information that you need to start growing indoors. We're going to do, I think, 2 more. Where we're going to finish setting up our grow tent, and then we're going to finish setting up a little bit of an automated system. But then we're going to take a break until we actually have our crops start to come up.
Yeah, that sounds great to me. Because it's having done these Grow How episodes already has helped me save my bonsai. So I thank you for that, because the last bonsai I had just did die, and this one's actually growing back.
It's coming back.
So yeah, now I make sure and I pH balance my water now.
It makes a huge difference.
It's making a big difference. And so you gave me some of that soil, and I've mixed that in with some of my other plants, and so all my plants are alive now, and I have you to thank for it, and it doesn't seem as daunting. I've learned a bit more patience when it comes to growing plants and stuff.
I think that's probably the big takeaway for me, that you don't necessarily need all the arcane knowledge of someone who's been growing for years. You just need to know enough to not get in the way of the plant. The plant will naturally want to grow if you give it decent water that's at the right pH, if you give it the right nutrients, and if you give it the right environment. I mean, this should be dead. These all should be dead, and they've done incredibly well because plants want to survive.
That's right, unless you spray fertilizer on them, which I mentioned because when we were in Vegas, we stayed at your parents' house, and your dad, he sprayed
No, he was saying
fertilizer
my
on
mom was doing. I'm like, no, that was you, Dad.
Yeah, he kept saying he fertilized them until you told him, do not put fertilizer on the leaves. And he's like, oh, it was your mom.
Yeah.
Yeah, your mom did that.
It's like, oh yeah, she said she got it. So it's one of those things where you plug it into your hose and it mixes the fertilizer and sprays
And
it.
it's like, it's intense,
It's
right? It's
super
like
concentrated.
Yeah, concentrated.
And they were spraying it onto the leaves of a rose bush. I'm like, that's actually really bad. I mean,
Right.
those are designed for lawns, but everything else you should be applying fertilizer to the soil, not to the greenery. Otherwise, they'll burn.
And you explained about the stoma,
Yeah,
and like that's the way the plant is. It breathes. It like opens.
Well, yeah,
up?
that's how it transpires. So
Yeah.
that's how it cools itself off when it's hot. So if the sun is out, if there's light, the stoma are open, which means that concentrated fertilizer can get in. If it gets in, it burns the leaf to heck.
Yeah. So if you see burned leaves
That's what you
like
did.
that, yeah, somebody is fertilizing the outside of your plant.
Folks, we're going to be back with more of this, and I think we should be bringing this over to the new studio because I want some pea pods on the know-how set.
Sorry,
Yeah.
Padre, there's no room.
And one thing that I've noticed too is the water. We have not been dumping the water, and it is starting to get
I know.
super
No,
stanky.
it's like I was supposed to do that week 1, and then we just never got around to it. Yeah, it's not good.
Let's just leave it in Leo's office. I'm sure he'd appreciate
Yeah,
it.
absolutely. We know that this was a lot of information. We're going to give you all the links to all the things that we talked about, from the Arrow Garden to this, to the different segments we did at Blackhat. You just go to our show page, which is where, Brian?
Well, twit.tv/KH, and if you want to find previous Grow How episodes, you'll want to go through there and thumb through the episodes. And if you did miss an episode, well, you should probably subscribe. And you can also download the version that you would like. But you know, there's other places to get information too.
Yeah, specifically our Google Plus group. That is the best place to go. It's over 10,000 members strong. And if you've got a project, if you want a project, if you're new to this, if you're an expert and you want to help young people because you understand that's what it takes to be a maker, then just go to Google Plus, look for know-how, and ask to join. There is an approval process so we can weed out all the spam, but we approve everyone. Just come on in and enjoy your time with the rest of the Kitas. That's the know-it-all. Of course, if you don't do Google Plus, there's another way to get a hold of us.
That's right. If you want to find out what we're doing when we're not working on know-how, or maybe some projects that we're kind of doing in our spare time, the best place to find that is on Twitter. I am at cranky_hippo.
And you're going to find me at PadreSJ. And there is, you know what, we made fun of him last time, but
did?
it is a triumphant return of our director.
You saying somebody's back?
He is back. It's Alex Gumpel.
How?
He is a good guy. He's a good man. He's a really, really good director.
Never heard
And
of him.
we're happy to have him. Al, could you please say hi to everybody?
Yes, that's right, Brian. I'm back at the controls to make your life a living hell.
What?
I'm watching you.
This is why I like
watching
having
everything you do. Goodbye, Brian. Goodbye.
Who is that?
I'm just kidding. It's good to be back.
I haven't seen that guy.
Yeah, no, but it's weird. Until next time, I'm Father Robert Balacer.
And I'm Brian Burnett.
And now that you know how.
Go grow it.